Some Bible prophecies can have a first fulfillment and a latter fulfillment. Usually in the latter fulfillment, it is usually for the very end time of this age, where Jesus in Luke 21 said that all things that are written must come to pass. Those dual type of prophecies, sometimes they have a larger fulfillment the first time around, and there's more details regarding that fulfillment. Other times, it is the second fulfillment of that prophecy that is the greater fulfillment, and so it has more understanding and it has more words in it, it has more expounding of the second fulfillment to take place. We have come to such a prophecy in Ezekiel chapter 27 regarding Tyrus. Now, for some of these prophecies like this, you may like to use Bible commentaries, a Bible commentary such as Clark's Bible commentary. You've got Matthew Henry's Bible commentary. You've got Albert Barnes' Bible commentary. And so these are indeed useful to give you the historical facts of what actually took place in the first fulfillment of that prophecy. Another tool that is very helpful in such prophecies and in general Bible study is Pictorial Bible Dictionary, or a Bible dictionary. I happen to have the set of 5 of the Zondervan Pictorial Encyclopedia of the Bible, and they can be very useful and very interesting indeed to use that in Bible study. From the Pictorial Bible Encyclopedia, I'm going to quote part of an article regarding Tyre. Throughout the long 2 centuries of Assyrian domination in the Middle East, Tyre had her share in common with other communities of aggression and strife. But her naval power and her almost impregnable position on her offshore island gave her a measure of immunity. It is significant that she contrived to break free from the dominance of Nineveh a generation before the last stronghold of the Assyrian imperialist kings fell in the closing decade of the 7th century BC. The date is given as 612 or 606 BC. This was another golden age of Tyrian influence and power. Ezekiel's chapter 27 and 28 of stern denunciation give a striking picture of the wealth, the might, the various trades that gathered around the Phoenician port. When Babylon succeeded Nineveh as the great aggressor of the Middle East, Tyre resisted Nebuchadnezzar. But the strain of the long siege, the drain of her wealth and manpower, and the disruption of her commerce over this period of war ended the dominance of the great Phoenician port. It appears to have endured a time of independence upon Egypt, or dependence, not independence, but dependence upon Egypt. Then the rule of Babylon, and then that of Persia, which succeeded Babylon's empire and pattern of command. Ezra, chapter 3:7, quotes an order of Cyrus II to Tyre to supply cedar for the restoration of the temple in Jerusalem, which the Persian monarch had sanctioned. Lebanon cedar at this time must have been increasingly scarce. The mountain forest had already suffered at least 7 centuries of exploitation. Seafaring, however, remained a Tyrian enterprise, and there is evidence that the mad Cambrius II conscripted a Tyrian fleet for his assault on Egypt, and that Tyrian galleys also sailed with the ill-fated Persian expedition against Greece, which the Greeks shattered in 480 BC. In 332 BC, in the course of his march through the crumbling Persian Empire, Alexander appears before Tyre and the city, confident in her strong position, closed her gates against this small Macedonian army. The siege that followed became one of the epic stories of military history. Alexander built a causeway across the narrow strait, which still remains the core of the wedge-shaped promontory that to this day attaches the ancient island site of Tyre to the mainland. The modern town occupies the shore and the artificial isthmus. It was only by this vast engineering feat and the costly assault at the end of Alexander that Alexander took Tyre. Ezekiel's prophecy came true, and the great city became a drying place for the nets of fishermen. Ezekiel 26 verse 5, 14, and also 47:10. The site, this article goes on to say, the site, however, retained its old prestige. Mid-period Tyre made a measure of recovery and functioned for a time as a republic. She recognized a rising star of Rome, established early political relations with the republic, and retained her independence until Augustus. When the prince absorbed Tyre into his provincial system in about 20 BC, the city disappeared from history. The remains, uncovered with some care, are extensive, and the stratification reads like a history of the whole crowded and historic coast. The ruin of Phoenician docks and warehouses lies beneath the building of Greeks and Romans. An old feature of the Greek period is an oblong theatre, unique in the Mediterranean world. A fine first-century pavement, a mosaic floored street of shops and colonnades. It has a special interest, for it dates from the time when Christ, following the hill paths from Galilee, visited the Phoenician coast. He might have trod this pathway on his further journey north. So that was the article from the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary, telling you a little bit about Tyre and indeed how the prophecy did come to pass. We can see it in chapter 27. You will notice there, verse 3, say unto Tyre, you are situated at the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles. Thus says the Lord, O Tyrus, you have said, I am perfect in beauty. You can go down to verse 7, fine linen and broidered works of Egypt were there. Verse 8, the inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were your marinas. mariners. Verse 9, the ancients of Gebal and the wise men thereof. Verse 10, Persia, Lud, Put. Verse 11, the men of Arvad. Verse 12, Tarshish. Verse 13, Javel, Tubal, Meshech. 14, Togar. That's only part of the word. Togarmah, traded with them. Verse 15, the men of Dedan. 16, Syria. 18, Judah and the land of Israel. 18, Damascus. 19, Dan, also and Javan. 20, Dedan. 21, Arabia. 22, the merchant of Sheba and Ramah. 23, Harun and Kenai and Eden, the merchants of Sheba. Verse 25, the ships of Tarshish. Verse 29, and all that handle the oar, and the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea. And then in verse 30, and shall cause their voice to be heard against you, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust on their heads. They shall wallow themselves in ashes at the downfall of Tyre. Verse 32, and in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for you, and a lament over you, saying, what city is like Tyrus, like the destroyed in the midst of the sea? Verse 33, you enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of your riches and of your merchandise. Verse 35, all the inhabitants of the isle shall be astonished at you, and their kings shall be sore afraid, and they shall be troubled in their countenance. Verse 36, the merchants among the people shall hiss at you. You shall be a terror, and never shall be any more. It's also a prophecy for the last days, at the end of this age, because it says here that Tyre would not be anymore. Well, the original Tyre was rebuilt, and it exists today. And so in that sense, it never did come to a complete end. This is a type. This prophecy of Tyre is a type of the Tyre that will live at the end time of this age. And you will see when you read all of that chapter that I've just pointed out to you, that if we go over to Revelation chapter 18, we have a modern Tyre. In Revelation 18, it is called Babylon, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. But we will read Revelation 18 and see how similar it sounds to the Tyre here of Ezekiel chapter 27, because the Tyre, ancient Tyre, was a type of the second fulfillment of the end time Tyre. But in Revelation, it is called Babylon. And we'll read it and see how similar it sounds to what we can read here in Ezekiel chapter 27. So we'll read Revelation 18 next time.